Oh. All right, bro. Should we just freestyle then?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Alrighty, welcome back to Open Up with Lockie. Oh, yeah, me. Number 237. Who's your host? I'm your host with the most. Number 237 with my bro, Andy Ahchee. Someone who I love and appreciate dearly. Someone who I consider to be a chief, I guess, of this time, of this period. Especially after connecting with you, Bridge and Extreme, and being lucky enough to be in your bubble or to be in the same team as you throughout that process and to witness that transformation and to witness your leadership was beautiful, bro. And then to have your friendship from then on has been amazing. Like deep conversations, and just a layer of depth as a man, especially as a Maori, that it's not too common. And so I'm very grateful for you, grateful for your time. And this isn't going to be a usual podcast where it's just interviewing you about your past or what you've overcome in terms of adversity, but it's going to be more of a conversation around something that's alive for you. So did you want to speak into what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the introduction, man. Firstly, I really appreciate you, man. I really honor you. And connecting with you and Bridge and Extreme was an absolute blessing. I remember looking over to my side and seeing you on the first 2-day workshop through Bridge. And I remember having a conversation with you, and you knew who I was affiliated with during that period, and you'd come from WA by yourself. It seemed like there was a bit of nervousness there, but also a lot of commitment to why you were there.
You know what that nervousness was?
What's that?
Possibly having to get naked.
Well, you know what? I didn't even know about that. I had no idea that that's what was one of the exercises. But I guess for you, knowing what you were going into, if the tables were turned, there would have been a lot of resistance for me to even be there. I don't even know if I would have shown up. So that just shows the level of commitment that you have within yourself to continually level up for not only yourself but for your family, but I guess more so importantly for the communities that you've chosen to work with, in particular men. So, man, well, as Haka would say, kudos to you, brother.
Kudos to you. I love that. I can hear him saying that too.
Yeah, I heard it in the back of my mind with Haka just saying, kudos, brother, kudos. What are you doing tapping into me right now, man? But yeah, thanks, brother. So a conversation that is very alive for me and has been for, I would say, somewhat of 6 months. You know, a big identity piece in finding who I am and where I belong. But it more so has come to a flourishing point where it's presented itself to me very predominantly. I guess that's the right word. Could not be. But there hasn't been any escaping from this topic, and that is, where do I belong as a Maori? You know, so for those who see me in the camera, I look like a Maori. I have Maori tattoos, you can see on the side here. However, I've never quite felt as if I belonged in a Maori community. I never quite felt as if I belonged within, I lie. I felt like I belonged within my fairer skinned friends and family, as my mother's Maori, my mother's English, my father's Maori, Samoan, Chinese. So I always felt as if I belonged within my mother's side of the family, because that's who I grew up with, at the fair side, but I never quite felt as if I fit in.
Yeah. What's what do you like? Obviously, if it's been live for you for the last 6 months. What have you learnt around the underlying whys as to why you felt like you didn't belong?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's what's I guess that's what stemmed for me recently over the more coming times. So growing up in New Zealand, growing up with my mother's side of the family, that as I said, they're English. They migrated to New Zealand, and my father's side again was Maori, Samoan, Chinese. We didn't have much to do with him because of my father's upbringing, and he didn't want us to be exposed to that. If anyone's familiar with the Once a Warriors film, I'm sure you have seen it multiple times. That was very much what my father's upbringing was, and that's just to touch on it. It was actually a lot worse than that, to the point where he couldn't watch it. So he did what he felt was best for us as children, and kept us away from it. And I guess he pushed his belief systems on what their upbringing was, and how that looked onto my mother, which then enabled her a story, to keep us even more protected in this bubble, in this shell, to the point where, coming into high school, you have options on choosing a language that you pick up, and Maori wasn't one of them that I was allowed to choose. So, some people have a choice when they come to school and what language they want. That choice was taken away from me, and that's not to cast any shade on my mother, because my mother's, for me, I believe she's the most incredible woman I could have ever asked for as a mother. But that was just from a lack of understanding and the story that she had come to understand and believe for herself.
That's huge, man. What about your connection to? Oh, sorry. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Auckland, West Auckland, and then when I was 9 years old, we moved over to the North Shore. So, which ended up being another big piece of why I kind of separated into this big experimental lifestyle. Being a Maori, growing up in the North Shore, you're instantly stigmatized. Oh, you're a flash Maori. You're a rich Maori. You're a plastic Maori. And these were beliefs that I had come to own myself, where I would have conversations and opening with, I'm a plastic Maori,
Wow.
and laugh about it to make them feel more comfortable. It wasn't about me. I'd already owned that story. I'm a plastic Maori. I never knew. I knew I wasn't a rich Maori, but I owned the story of being a plastic Maori.
What was your relationship like with? Because for those who don't know, back in NZ, like I'm sure people see with sporting teams, especially the All Blacks, they do a haka before a game, but you know, haka and the culture around haka is embedded within every school and so many organizations, like to the point where you school on school rugby, school on school league, whatever, it'll be haka for haka, and like there's really no escaping it. So what was your relationship like with haka and that side of culture going through school?
That's another beautiful question, man. Um, I even to this day, I don't know how to do a haka with confidence. I went to New Zealand 3 years ago to one of my good friend's weddings. I was one of his groomsmen, and the other groomsmen went up to give him a haka, and I was standing on the side, and he looked over at me like in disgust and disappointment, and I looked at him, I was like, "Fuck, man, I don't know it," and I felt like this worthless um, plastic Maori. So my relationship with the haka hasn't been a good one. Whereas that's a big piece of what it is to be a Maori, you know, is knowing how to do a haka, knowing how to give respects to people.
Yeah, I've had the same relationship, and I guess why I said at the start it's going to be more of a conversation is because this felt alive for you and you wanted to have this conversation because this is the place that I'm at the moment as well, which is really delving into it. And my relationship is the same with the haka, and that's why I asked you, because we do have some similarities. And I remember being an intermediate, but having a level of body shame where I went to try out for haka, and they said you can't do it unless you take your shirt off, and I was so ashamed of my body as someone just starting intermediate that I was like, nah, I'm not doing it. And I remember being in that class and having guys come back to class, and people make fun of them for taking their shirt off and being fat. So it's like from that moment on, I was just like, hell no, I'm not doing the haka. To the point where I'd sabotage being in sporting teams, so I didn't have to do haka. And then, like on the flip side of that, having my white friends, Pakeha friends, Samoans, Tongans in those teams doing the haka and being like, fuck, why am I not letting myself do that? And so, for me going through school, it was just easier to be fully against being a Maori and being part of the culture and immersed in it and rag on it and razz on it to a certain extent than to face off with the fact that I was too scared to delve in. Like, what was that for you?
Yeah, I got to say, it was exactly the same for me. Exactly the same. Not to the point where taking off my top, I wasn't put in that position to even, I guess, try to learn how to do a haka. Like I touched on before, that decision was taken away from me to go and be in touch with the multicultural class in school. And I actually really wanted to do it. I really wanted to do it. And again, not trying to cast any shade on my mother, so it's just a lack of understanding that she had. Uh, I just ended up adapting into that story myself. That's well, I guess this is me. I don't do haka. To the point where I got a tamoko on the side because it was cool and I wanted to look like a Maori, but I felt so much shame having that on my arm. I would cover it up every time I came past an elderly Maori because I knew they would speak to me in Maori and expect a response. At least I had that expectation on myself to respond. So I would cover up. I'd be sitting in a car and chuck a hoodie on to cover up the markings on my arm.
Wow. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Keep going.
So yeah, I never got the opportunity to be in a place to learn. And when I did, I fully immersed myself in it and did what I could to learn. I was sick and tired of not knowing how to do a haka, and after the disappointment of seeing my friend shaking his head and like I didn't want to go through my life feeling that shame again. It all sort of started to unravel itself from that point onwards.
That's awesome, man. So, and I'm the same as you, right? Like being from Auckland, especially from the city, it's just a thing to when you're in high school go and get a tamoko without it having any meaning. And in the moment, it's not really something I thought about. It's not something my whole friend group thought about because we went to this place over on the North Shore, over in Beach Haven, and Arapeta, shout out my bro. Arapeta gave us our tamoko, but there was absolutely no meaning to it, and I never really thought about it until
I
I
know
got
who
questioned.
that is too.
I never really thought about it until I got questioned about it for the first time. And, my response, instead of being respectful of the culture, was, nah, fuck that. I don't need no meaning. Like, this doesn't mean anything to me. Being Māori doesn't mean anything to me. And that was the place I was in. It was like immediately becoming defensive and reactive. And I remember last year being asked by someone, who was having a slight dig, being asked by someone, okay, what does you've got a tamoko, what does it mean? Surely it means something. And I'm like, no, it literally has no meaning. I just got it because that's what you did to be cool in high school. Well, that's what we did to be cool anyway. To get a tattoo, we weren't going out and getting tattoos of fish or anything like that. Koi fish, we were getting tamoko
Yeah.
because we could. And so that in itself has created a level of shame and guilt that has caused me to act from a place of like spite or resentment, which just like further separates me and people like me from the culture, from being willingly engaged. So what was that like for you to go through that, like hiding your tamoko, not having the choice to learn te reo in school, and then having your friend, or having a sense that your friend was disappointed in you for not engaging with that haka at his wedding? What was it like for you to get to a point where you're like, okay, it's time that I look into this or challenge this or face off with this part of myself?
Mm. Yeah. Obviously, after dealing with the shame, and look, I've got to be honest, I still have a level of that shame within myself and guilt that I'm working through. I'm in recovery. But one thing I made sure I did was, I had my cousin's 21st, which came up not long after that, and we were going to do tiki tonu. And this was before I had come across men's medicine, because they did tiki tonu at the end of each workshop. So I got the opportunity to do that, and I put my hand up. Actually, no, I came home. I came home from that wedding, and I asked my younger brother. He just said, have a look online, look at the lyrics on there. And I remember being in my room, listening to the lyrics, watching them, and trying to read them, pronounce the words on my phone, because I didn't want to experience that shame, that shame, that unworthiness again. Not long after that, we were given the opportunity to learn together as a family and to bless my cousin with a haka for her 21st. That was the beginning of really subconsciously and consciously looking into what it actually meant to be a Maori. That was just the first layer of it. And the rest started to open up a little bit later down the track. I mean, like a couple of years later down the track. But that was, even though that was a big point of shame, it was also a big point of change. It was a pivotal moment for me to start to look at what it actually means to be a Maori, and start to, I guess, gauge a relationship of self-worth of who it is that I'm looking at in the mirror. Yeah. Does that answer your question in a roundabout way?
Yeah, I think it does. Like, I guess the next thing I wanted to move on to, and this is something that stuck with me, and something that I associate with you, because a few years ago, I got asked by a beautiful man called Leon Ruri, who started Haka for Life. It's a business that was started here, and they go and do all the haka at Mardi Gras, Anzac Day, all that sort of stuff. And they have a corroboree where they do haka and indigenous, like Aboriginal dance, First Nation people, and they combine the two, and it's really profound. And I remember him asking me to come and do a haka, and being like, "Yep, yep, 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 yep," with no real intention of going, just because I was so afraid of not knowing the actions, of doing one of the actions wrong. And one of the things that stuck with me from our time at Extreme, with such a heavy contingent of men's medicine being at that one, was men's medicine got up and they did a haka for Lino and Watane, and all the other Māori boys jumped up as well to do the haka. And I remember just sitting down and people around me going, "Aren't you gonna do it?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know it." And so what stuck with me, especially around you after that, was we were talking about the haka, and I think you asked me like why I didn't do it, and I said to you, I don't know the actions, like I don't know what to do. And you're like, oh, bro, I don't know it either, but I just get up and take my shirt off and try. And I was just like, holy fuck, how do you have the confidence to do that? Like, what instills that belief or that confidence within you to get up and do something that you have no idea how to do and just be a part of it? Like, how did that shift for you to go from that place of I'm a plastic Maori to getting up and doing a haka without knowing the actions?
Yeah, I guess the short answer is I got sick and tired. I've been sick and tired, bro. Even though I'd learned a little bit of it, I didn't know how to pronounce the words. I still don't know how to pronounce the words properly, and that comes down to a level of self-sabotage and ignorance within myself, of not fully immersing myself into, I guess, being fully committed, fully into understanding, still coming up with excuses. But yeah, I got sick and tired. I've been sick and tired of standing on the sideline, like as you were. That was me. That was always me. And yet I would see on social media, on people's videos, people doing a haka, and I would have this feeling in my body like, man, that's amazing. I wish I could get up and do that. I wish I could go up and do the haka when all the stuff went in Christchurch and in New Zealand and all of this. I wish I could be a part of those men that are standing up there and being courageous and being strong within who they are. I guess the other short answer is I got sick and tired of wishing. And I just thought, well, there's only one way I'm going to learn, and I'm in a place of learning and growing myself. Let's just chuck myself in everything that comes at me that makes me feel uncomfortable. And every time I do the haka, I still feel uncomfortable because I don't know how to pronounce the words, and I'm still looking around and like, shit, am I doing the right thing? I'll just stand on the outskirt, and so I'm not so seen, but I'm there trying to build that worth within myself, trying, still not committing, but trying.
That's awesome, bro. And I think was it yourself and Haka who maybe the start of last year, jumped into Piki Te Hauora?
Yeah, we did. So it's actually Leno as well. We all jumped into Piki Te Hauora. And I saw you jumped in there too.
Yep.
Yep. That was the beginning for me. So okay, let's go. Let's give this a crack.
What was that like for you to be someone who had an interest in picking up te reo in high school, but not having the option to, or not being allowed to choose to do so, and then to, as an adult, choose to take that path?
Yeah, it felt right. It felt right. It felt it was a proud moment for myself. It was for me. It was just building layers of worthiness and really finding who I was, and doing my best to really immerse myself in what that looks like. Jumping into that program, I did maybe 3 or 4 weeks in it. Being a speaker, I love to speak. I may not have the best speech, but I'll still speak. I'll put myself in the firing line all the time. And because I did so, I was always selected in that class to share or to say what I'd written down as part of the homework, part of the task. You know what? Being completely honest and open and transparent, I stopped going into that because I stopped committing to the homework. It was just too much for me at the time. So again, a level of shame. Hello.
Oh, hi, gorgeous. What's that for?
I found it on the living tree.
Oh, yay, high five. I love you. That's my friend. He's pretty, huh?
Oh, she's cute, man.
Can you shut the door, please?
Oh, I gotta love kids, hey. Yeah, I actually dropped out of that because I wasn't able to keep up. I had a lot of things going on at the time, and I could have chosen to stay there, chosen to commit, but again, I self-sabotaged myself.
Well, brother, you are not alone because I did one session.
Yeah.
One session of that group and took on this belief. Because we had so many people and it took so long to get through everyone. It was like, nah, I don't like how long I have to wait to get to my turn. I'm just not going to do this. Like the investment wasn't much. I'm not going to lose much. And so just essentially, bro, sabotaging myself because immediately on that first call, it was, oh, you're actually going to have to say something in Te Reo. And you're going to have to look at your pepeha and say it and express yourself and be seen fully in that and be seen in not being able to pronounce the words properly, which for me caused so much fear that I sabotaged through this belief that I wasn't going to learn the way that I enjoy learning. And so it's interesting that both of us dropped out. Obviously I dropped out after the first one, but I find that really interesting, man.
I told you, man, our stories are very similar. We've been self-sabotaging ourselves and what has been there to take a claim on for our entire lives,
What's alive for me right now is thinking into that and especially thinking into the language and the potential to be in a situation and to be asked or spoken to in Te Reo and not understand, number one, and then not know how to respond, because that's caused me to show up poorly in some interactions and, around some people. I remember doing an event, speaking at an event for Hana Tapiata, who's someone that I admire and look up to for the way that she shows up in the world. She come to Perth and I went to speak at that. And because she was that person so entrenched and immersed in the culture, and so expressive within that, I felt this real need to impress her with what I had accomplished business-wise and financially, that I showed up so heavy in my ego that it created this resistance. And so while we were extreme and we had the lunch break, we had to go call someone and cut the cord or finish our incomplete, have the hard conversation. She was one of the people that I called. So it was like, man, I know that I just showed up so poorly and created so much resistance that it's been awkward since then. And so noticing that, and then especially with Raniera as well, plant-based Maori, because we do some like work with him with Men's Work Collective and host his course and stuff, within those interactions and within our podcast, I've found myself really holding back or going into my shell just in case he speaks to me, speaks to Reo and I can't respond. And because I value him as a person and the way he shows up, it's so much easier to just stay in my shell and to not put myself out there. Just with that little voice that says, what if he speaks to you and you can't do it and he thinks less of you? So that's what's alive for me, and that's how I've shown up in most of my interactions with Māori, bro, with that expectation that you're talking about.
Me too. Yeah, that's been a common trend for myself as well, where I'd almost draw a line between myself and Māori up until recent. Well, because I just wanted to avoid those conversations, and it's like I've given myself enough guilt and enough shame to then have to go through it again by saying, "Hey, I actually don't understand what you're saying. Can you say that in English? Because, we're showing up and everywhere else in our lives. We're doing, I know you're doing amazing things for yourself. I'm doing amazing things for myself and changing old belief systems and my family and how we live. And there's still that one little piece there that we're still avoiding, which is actually a big crutch for us, where if we close the gap on that, we both know, tell me if I'm wrong, we both know that there's that big piece there that if we just stepped into that little bit and closed the gap and we're able to apply all of the work that we know and hold our head high and say, kia ora, brother, I don't understand what you're saying. Could you please share that to me in English so I can respond? We would actually be honored for doing so. I think in New Zealand, I hadn't had really good experiences with being a Maori. So and maybe you're the same. Maybe we've both subconsciously kept that belief on being shut down from other people. Because a lot of people are stuck in that old paradigm of what it means to be a Maori, of having to know your pepeha, of having to speak reo, to be worthy of having tāmoko. And I guess that's been a big ingraining belief system in us having to even have those conversations because we don't want to be turned down again. Is that something that's similar for you?
Yeah. I mean, and I guess the video that you responded to and like what sort of brought this conversation about today was me having a realization that my projection onto Maori and Maori culture is pretty much because I didn't win a Maori scholarship to King's College in NZ, especially like coming from Manurewa and not wanting to go to the intermediate or high schools around there because I was told that they wouldn't serve me as well, and having all my hopes and dreams put into winning that and having this expectation that I would, and then not doing so and feeling like I wasn't wide enough, I wasn't rich enough, wasn't smart enough, but most importantly, wasn't Māori enough to win that. And then going from that place to projecting not just onto the culture and on the people, but on my dad, like, oh, I didn't win that because you didn't teach me how to be Māori, because you're not of the bloodline of our village, because that was your stepdad, and because you weren't taught the language and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, most everything that I've done and the way that I've shown up within the culture and my interaction with it has been from a place of projection from not getting that scholarship.
Yeah. I'll give you a little bit of a backstory for me and I guess where I really just kind of drew the line between myself and Māori. I came to Australia and being transparent again, I didn't want to associate with Māori. So I'm not coming to this country to associate with my own people. And now I'm immersed in the Māori community. So when, growing up in the back end of my, say, the beginning of my teens and the back end of moving to Australia, I grew up with a lot of Pākehā friends who had money. They all did really well for themselves. Well, their families did really well for themselves. Now, my parents didn't have much, but they gave us everything that they could. They gave us an opportunity to be in better schooling. They didn't want us to grow up in West Auckland and go through all the things that they had heard that go on within these schools. So they gave us an opportunity and grinded hard and still do to this day to do the best that they can as parents to provide, with what they believe is providing. And because I was always looked at as this Māori, what I believed a Māori was from the projection of other people, going to parties, for instance, being accused of stealing things, but not actually have been in an environment to have stolen anything. It came to a point where I just thought, you know what? If you want me to be a Maori, I'm going to be a Maori. So my belief system of being a Maori was to not be educated, to steal, to get involved in crime, to get involved with street gangs. This is where my change came. I was very intelligent. I was good at art. I was good at graffiti. I was good at specific subjects at school. I didn't do them the following year because they were too easy for me. So I began to go into what I believed was a Maori and what people wanted me to be. And I became this, to put it very bluntly, little shit who wanted to experience the world and be what he thought it was to be a man, and what he thought it was to what he thought he needed to do to belong, because he didn't belong anywhere else. So he just thought, well, I'm going to adapt into this belief system, and I'm going to do what I feel I want to do, and to belong in a place where people accept me for being me. And it wasn't until recently that, and I mean, a month ago, we were on the podcast and we were talking about what it was to be a Maori, what it was to be a Maori with another brother Ra. And he had a similar upbringing, growing up on the North Shore as well. Funny enough.
Oh,
and and we didn't know that. Neither of us knew that at the time until we had that conversation. And what I said on there was, anyone that does listen to this, who is Maori, I just want you to know that you are educated. You are worthy. You are enough. And as I went back and I listened to this later on when it came out, I realized that I was actually speaking to myself. It was me that was talking to me and the belief system that I had adapted. So I've come into a place now where I'm rewriting that. Like, okay, everything that I thought it was to be a Maori isn't actually true. I'm starting to line up with, I lined up with Dre. I'm not going to say his surname because I don't want to butcher it. And he's a facilitator for Maori movement.
Cool.
And he's very intelligent. He's extremely intelligent. And just like linking up with these people, and I mean, it's not just him, it's many people that I'm realizing, oh shit. So I've just told myself this and not given people the benefit of the doubt because of the belief system that I adapted to and I projected onto them. So I come into a place now where I'm conscious of it now, and I'm rewriting what I believed it was to be a Maori. We had a conversation the other night. There was on a video call between four of us. We catch up once a week, and my father's grandfather passed away. He was the last heteraka of my grandmother's line. My family, our surname is Heteraka. We come from a place called Whangaruru, Mokau Bay, up north. And something happened on that call. Something really interesting happened on that call. So I was talking about this and sharing what had happened on that day and what I'd experienced. And then all of a sudden I broke down. I started to cry. And the words that were coming out, I wasn't controlling. They were just coming through. And I said something along the lines of, I'm sick and tired of not knowing. I'm sick and tired of not knowing my pepeha. I feel as if it's time for me to learn. And I am Maori, and no matter what anybody says to me, they cannot take that away from me. No matter if they have their projection onto me because of the color of my skin or not being Maori enough, and not having tattoos and not being worthy enough. no matter what anybody says, they cannot take that away from me. I am Maori, and nobody will ever take that away from me. So I went on a bit of a tangent there, but that for me was a big moment of change. And I guess similar to you with your experience that you've had recently, that was mine.
That's huge. Sorry, I have to ask, do you know Potama Hitaraka?
I don't know. No.
Damn it. Hey, Kiwis always think everyone knows everyone.
He's probably like a first cousin or second cousin. We're probably second cousins too.
Yeah, I would say so. I guess like that's brought something up for me, and I'm loving the flow of this, because I think as we go back and forth, it's natural, and it's like brings to light some of the things that maybe we haven't thought about for a while. And one of them for me is I remember being in primary school, like it was very acceptable to be smart and to want to do well within school. And then in that transition into intermediate and not going to King's and going to Manurua Intermediate instead, not being in the smart class, number one, that hurt my ego. But because I was the smartest in my class and tried really hard, I got mocked a lot for being someone who was like seen to be intelligent. And so everyone around me just wanted me to be average. And I found that really hard to accept. So from then, instead of saying, no, I don't want to be that, I said, no, I don't want to be Maori, because the rest of the Maori want me to be this way. And so I think from intermediate onwards, I always wanted to be, and this might come to a shock to people, but I always wanted to be white. Like I didn't want to be brown. People would tell me like, oh, you got your skin color is so good. It's like, yeah, what does that mean? Like, I just want to be white. I want to be like Chris Hemsworth, or, you know, all the guys you see on TV, the Ryan Goslings. I don't want to be Maori. There wasn't no Aquaman, Jason Momoa back then, you know? And so that's been a huge thing for me, is letting that go and accepting. It's like, fuck yeah, it's actually really cool to be brown. It's cool to be a Maori. I might not know the language or how to do a haka, but I actually really enjoy being me and having someone with culture. And so I guess off the back of that, a good segue is I wanted to ask, what do you feel it means to be Maori now, knowing that the belief was to be uneducated, to be a thief?
Oh, I wish I had got the second piece to this, because this is so important. And a question I asked Dre the other day was, what is it to be Maori for you? And he gave the most, I'll send this to you, because this will speak volumes to you. He gave the most beautiful analogy of what it meant to be Maori to him. Now, if you break Maori up, I think ma, white, but ma meaning pure. Pure, and the second part is the part that I haven't remembered. But he was saying something along the lines of, as long as you're pure within yourself at all times, you'll be Maori. We've been Maori all the time. So what I took away from that was, if anyone ever asks me what I'm doing, my response is going to be, just be Maori, bro. Just being pure. I'm just trying to be pure at all times. But for me, you know, what it means to be Maori is to be proud. Is to be proud of the blood that runs through your veins. To be proud that you come from culture, and whether you know your culture's history or not, it's still something to be proud of. You know, I know, if we knew what our people were capable of back in the day, back in time, before the Western integration came into New Zealand, the takeover that took away that power, that force to be reckoned with, we would be extremely proud of where we came from. So for me, it's just to keep your head held high, and to know that no matter what nobody says to you, you are Maori. You have come from a place and a line of warriors, people that could navigate the sea by looking up at the stars, people that could live from the land, people that have the most beautiful waiatas, songs, and people that have so much love for family.
That's cool, man. Something that come up for me there was this belief that Maori are warriors, and they are, right, by every means. But what come up for me then was, as a kid and a man whose nervous system response, the innate response, is flight rather than fight, and having a lot of shame around not being this reactive, aggressive person, that caused a level of detachment as well. It's like, fuck, I'm not a warrior. That must mean I'm not Maori. And so that's actually something I've been working through lately, is getting so comfortable in being someone who operates from a nervous system response of flight, that I'm not trying to force myself or put myself in positions to be aggressive, to box, to do shit like that, where I'm fighting against my response and trying to be in aggression, anger, confrontation, just for the sake of it. So that's a big one for me. And I think for me, man, like I'm actually really proud of where my family's from. It's such a beautiful place. I'm really proud of my ancestors and what the ancestral line is. Although I'm not blood, and I don't know the blood side of my father's ancestry or genealogy, I'm proud of being a part of that anyway. And I guess what I want to ask is, where to from here?
Mm.
Like for you, and then I'll answer that as well.
As a Maori,
Yeah, like how are you going to show up moving forward, and is there anything in place in the near future to help you take those steps?
yeah. Firstly, just to answer the question, yes and yes. There are steps in place. First thing for me is to learn how to speak my pepeha. I would love to be able to jump on a podcast, for instance, and just speak my pepeha. This is where I'm from. This is my river. This is my mountain. This is my marae. That excites me. So own that. Speak into that. I actually see myself at some point in time, in the future. I know that when our parents, well, my parents are still young, but someone needs to come up. Someone needs to take a stand. And I mean, we show leadership in our lives in so many places. That's one of the areas that is speaking to me, that someone needs to speak on behalf of the family, and that will be me. So the journey it will be a long journey, and I don't have any expectation on myself just to go boom, to figure it all out straight away. As long as we're walking or crawling, we're still moving, and have some plans coming in the future to do some work with Maori people, and I won't give out too much of that because I don't want to, out of respect for everyone else that's involved, I don't want to give too much information on that. But there is something that we are working on, and that's actually been a big part of my journey in me finding finding myself and my worth for who I am. And I did not realize how much I needed to do that until it's all started to unfold itself to me. It's like, okay, all right. Okay, I hear you. I'm there. I know I need to be there.
It's beautiful, bro.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to document this process
Mm,
in
mm.
some way, shape,
You know
or
what?
form.
Something that's absolutely, bro. Absolutely. Something that was coming up for me too was, um, because I don't know, for you may have thought that prior to us really having a conversation about this, that I may have been more fluent within being Maori until we had this chat. But you and I are very similar. Our stories are very, very similar, very, very similarly aligned. And there could be a little piece of accountability there for our journey.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I see in documenting it too, is like there's a level of accountability to me, but also accountability to people who also need to see this process. And that just puts so much more purpose into that for me to initially get that ball rolling. And the ball rolling for me is I've committed to actually doing the Haka with Haka for Life at the corroboree on Anzac Day, which is like a big one.
Amazing.
Being a part of that, which, in itself scares me to not know the language, to not know the actions, but I'm actually, for the first time in my life, really excited about being immersed in that and not being afraid of who I am and not being afraid of the power. And I think what's helped that is becoming okay with my own anger, like loving my anger and learning how to express it and understanding that Haka is such a beautiful and profound way to, exert and express that anger and aggression. Such a healthy way too, healthy masculine. And so that's what the next step is for me. My dad, far out in his 50s, went through Te Wananga and went back as like a high ranking cop to learn te reo so that he could be like a Maori liaison for the police. And so now he works with the communities, moved from Auckland to Nelson and works with the communities down there and helps like the at-risk Maori, and speaks on behalf of our family. And so after this, I have to get on a call and apologize to him for not supporting him in wanting to learn the language. Like my mother didn't support him. I didn't support him and instead projected my insecurity by making fun of the language. So then get on a call and celebrate him and apologize. So I'm looking forward to
amazing,
this
bro.
process, bro.
That's beautiful. And like there's levels. There's so many levels to this. Hey, just when we think we've made it, we're just constantly stripping back a little piece by piece, and it all comes to surface. Something that was shared to me also was there's no running away from being Maori. It will come. It will come to you in some way or another at whatever time is the right time for you. And I guess for you and I, we both need to stop running because we can't escape it.
Yeah, exactly, bro. And it's a blessing, man. It's such a blessing. I think might have been Tane, beautiful Tane, Mr. Heketa.
Oh, he's a beautiful man, Tane.
Inside and out. I think it was him that said to me that like we are so close, like only two generations removed from being a people who were connected to the earth and connected to spirit. And we're so lucky to be so close and not have to travel so far through generations and an ancestral line and clearing until we get back to that place. And so I think that's what really excites me the most, is connecting back to that primal part of myself, to connecting to spirit as a Maori and connecting to the earth as a Maori. And that's something that Hannah's written about in her book. And that's something that really, really excites me about actually committing, not convincing myself that I have commit, but actually committing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I asked a question to Dre and also to Bees from Maori Movement. And that question was, this was at the beginning. I was like, okay, we need to figure this out. And then again, recently to Dre. And I said to them, for someone that wants to reconnect to being Maori, where should they begin? And the answer was to go back to your home, go back to your land, touch the whenua, begin there. And at this time and place, with what's going on in the world, that's not impossible, but it's a big commitment. It's a huge commitment. And I guess for anyone that does listen to this, if this is a journey that you're going through yourself, or that you're willing to accept that you've been going through yourself, is that you can still do that through visualization. You can still go home. You can still visualize touching the ground, touching the earth, putting your feet in the water. It's still possible. We still have that power within us to do that.
I love that. That's a really cool way of doing it. And hopefully, April 6th, Jacinda Ardern says, yes, there is a travel bubble.
Yeah.
All right, bro. Is there anything else you want to add to this? Because I feel like this has been a real profound conversation.
Last thoughts. Just love who you are. Love where you're from. The sooner you begin to love every aspect about yourself, the deeper you come within yourself into loving who you truly are. There's no running away from it. You can run for as long as you want, but it's inevitable, to really find that wholeness is to accept where you're from, accept where your family's from. The change starts from you. And for you and I, it starts from us.
Yep. Yeah, man. I'm excited, bro. I'm excited to follow along how you go. I'm excited to document and express how I go. And yeah, it's an exciting journey to be on. And especially to know, after knowing you for a few years now and getting to a depth where we can express ourselves emotionally as men and tap into that feminine, to now know that we have such similar paths and such similar journeys unfolding. It's really comforting. It's really comforting to have that. So I appreciate you for taking time for this. I appreciate you for when I asked what was alive and what you wanted to speak into, instead of speaking into, your offerings and what you've created, you wanted to dive into this. That's powerful, bro. So thank you.
No, you're welcome, man. This has been a great conversation for myself, and I was excited to have this kōrero with you. So it's been beautiful, Brian. You've got a brother there walking with you through your journey too, as I know that I have with you. So looking forward to how things unfold over the next coming years.
Yeah. All right, bro. I think we'll leave it there. Thank you for your time and have a good day, eh?
Yo, love you, brother.
Love you too.